Australia, major cities under threat. Australia is once again grappling with a devastating wildfire crisis that is escalating with alarming speed. What began as isolated bushfires in remote rural areas has now spiraled into a national emergency, threatening some of the country's largest cities. As of this week, towering infernos have breached urban perimeters, forcing mass evacuations, consuming homes and infrastructure, and casting entire regions under a thick, toxic haze of smoke. A nation in flames. The current wildfire season in Australia is among the most catastrophic in recent memory. Fueled by soaring temperatures, prolonged drought, and fierce winds, bushfires have ignited across multiple states, particularly New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, and South Australia. These fires are spreading rapidly, jumping containment lines, crossing highways, and reaching the outer suburbs of cities like Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide. In Sydney, a ring of fire has surrounded portions of the city's west and southwest. Suburbs such as Penrith, Campbelltown, and Blacktown have witnessed sky-high flames and choking smoke that have plunged daytime into darkness. Residents have been urged to evacuate or prepare for rapidly shifting fire fronts. Emergency alerts are being issued hourly as firefighters battle to keep the blazes from moving deeper into urban centers. Melbourne is facing a similar scenario, with fires approaching from the north and east. The iconic Dandenong Ranges and nearby townships have been severely affected, and thousands have fled toward the city for shelter. Smoke has blanketed the skyline, reducing visibility and triggering widespread health warnings, unprecedented scale and intensity. Authorities are calling the scale of the fires unprecedented. More than 12 million hectares have already been scorched, an area larger than the entire country of Portugal. Entire ecosystems have been obliterated. Hundreds of homes have burned to the ground, and tragically, lives have been lost. Fighters, including many volunteers, are working around the clock under brutal conditions. Aircraft dump water and fire retardants from the sky, while ground crews create fire breaks and try to save critical infrastructure. This year's fires are being intensified by a dangerous climate pattern, a combination of El Niño and Indian Ocean dipole effects, which has brought record-breaking heat waves and extremely low humidity. These climatic conditions have transformed the Australian bush into a powder keg, ready to explode with the slightest spark. Urban life disrupted. Life in major Australian cities has been turned upside down. Schools have closed. Hospitals are struggling to treat patients suffering from smoke inhalation and respiratory complications. Public transport is frequently interrupted. Flights have been cancelled due to poor visibility. In Canberra, the air quality recently became the worst of any city in the world, with smoke seeping into homes, offices, and even underground parking garages. The economic toll is mounting by the day. Tourism has plummeted as visitors flee fire-affected zones. Agriculture has taken a major hit, with crops and livestock perishing in the flames. Power grids are under strain, and water supplies are being closely monitored as drought conditions worsen. Wildlife and environmental collapse. Perhaps one of the most heartbreaking aspects of this crisis is its impact on Australia's unique wildlife. Experts estimate that over 1 billion animals have died so far. Iconic species such as koalas, kangaroos, wombats, and cockatoos have been decimated. Entire populations have been wiped out in certain areas. Rescue teams are racing against time to save injured animals, often pulling them from smoldering forests and taking them to makeshift wildlife hospitals. The environmental consequences are dire. Rainforests that have never burned before are now turning to ash. Ancient eucalyptus forests, which normally regenerate after fire, are being destroyed so thoroughly that recovery may take generations. Rivers and lakes are being contaminated by ash and debris, further threatening fragile ecosystems. A nation responds. The response across Australia has been massive, but without challenges. Thousands of emergency personnel, military units, and international firefighting teams have been mobilized. Community centers, sports arenas, and schools have been turned into evacuation shelters. Across the nation, citizens are banding together, donating supplies, opening their homes, and supporting firefighters and evacuees. However, public anger is growing over the government's preparedness and response. Many are demanding stronger action on climate change, which scientists warn is making bushfires more frequent, more intense, and longer lasting. Raging wildfires sweep across Australia, cities engulfed in flames. Australia is currently facing one of the most devastating wildfire seasons in recent history. Across the continent, massive fires have broken out, spreading rapidly due to extreme heat, dry conditions, and strong winds. These unprecedented wildfires are not only destroying vast areas of natural landscapes, but have also engulfed several major cities, causing widespread devastation and putting millions of lives at risk. The scale and intensity of the fires are staggering. Normally remote and less populated areas are now the center of catastrophic blazes, while urban centers, some of the most populous in the country, are also burning. These wildfires have stretched firefighting resources to their limits, forcing emergency responders into intense battles to protect homes, infrastructure, and lives. Impact on major cities. Unlike previous wildfire seasons that primarily affected rural and forested regions, the current fires have reached the outskirts and even central areas of key Australian cities. Cities such as Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Adelaide are grappling with thick smoke, dangerously poor air quality, and the direct threat of fire approaching residential neighborhoods. Evacuations are underway in several suburbs as the fires push closer to urban zones. The encroachment of fire into city limits is a nightmare scenario for residents and officials alike. Urban areas are not typically equipped to handle such disasters, making evacuation and containment efforts complicated and dangerous. Many people have been forced to flee their homes at short notice, with limited access to transportation and essential supplies. Environmental and health consequences. The environmental impact of these fires is devastating. Millions of hectares of forest, farmland, and wildlife habitats have been consumed by the flames. Entire ecosystems face collapse, and countless animal species are struggling to survive or have already perished. The destruction of natural resources will have long-term consequences for Australia's biodiversity and ecological balance. Health concerns have skyrocketed due to the intense smoke and ash blanketing cities and towns. Air quality levels have dropped to hazardous ranges, prompting public health warnings and urging vulnerable populations such as the elderly, children, and those with respiratory conditions to stay indoors. Hospitals are seeing an influx of patients suffering from respiratory distress and other fire-related health issues. Firefighting and emergency response. Firefighters across Australia are working around the clock under extreme conditions to contain blazes. Hundreds of fire crews, supported by aerial water bombers and military assistance, are engaged in tireless efforts to establish fire breaks and protect critical infrastructure. Despite these heroic efforts, the fires continue to spread due to unfavorable weather conditions, including prolonged drought and high winds. Emergency services have issued multiple evacuation orders and set up shelters for displaced residents. Authorities are coordinating with community organizations and volunteers to provide aid, supplies, and medical care to those affected. However, the sheer scale of the disaster is overwhelming, and many communities remain isolated and at risk. Underlying causes and climate factors. Experts attribute the severity of the current wildfires to a combination of climate change and natural weather cycles. Rising global temperatures have resulted in hotter, drier conditions across much of Australia, creating the perfect environment for fires to ignite and spread rapidly. Drought-stricken vegetation acts as tinder, and strong winds fan the flames uncontrollably. Scientists warn that such extreme wildfire events are becoming more frequent and severe due to ongoing climate change. They stress the urgent need for both local and global action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and invest in fire management strategies to mitigate future disasters. Community and government response. The response from both the government and local communities has been swift but challenged by the magnitude of the crisis. Federal and state governments have mobilized emergency funds, resources, and personnel to support firefighting operations and recovery efforts. International offers of assistance have also been made to bolster Australia's capacity to manage the catastrophe. Communities have shown remarkable resilience and solidarity, with neighbors helping neighbors, donations pouring in, and volunteers stepping up to aid the firefighting and relief efforts. Despite the tragedy, there are numerous stories of hope, courage, and unity emerging from the crisis. Australia is currently facing one of the most devastating wildfire seasons in its history. The fires have spread rapidly across vast swathes of the country, engulfing not only remote forests and bushlands, but also large urban centers. This unprecedented disaster is causing massive destruction, displacing thousands of residents and putting enormous pressure on emergency services. The scale and intensity of these fires are staggering. Multiple cities are simultaneously battling blazes that are fueled by extreme weather conditions, including prolonged drought, record-breaking temperatures, and strong winds. These elements combine to create a perfect storm for fire ignition and spread, making containment efforts extraordinarily difficult. Major cities, which historically have been considered safe from such natural disasters, now find themselves at the front line of the crisis. Suburbs in the outskirts of metropolitan areas have been devastated, forcing mass evacuations and disrupting daily life on a massive scale. The smoky skies have turned bright daylight into a dim orange haze, severely impacting air quality and public health. Schools have been closed, flights cancelled, and businesses shuttered as the fires threaten critical infrastructure. Emergency services are working tirelessly, with firefighters both local and from overseas, risking their lives to contain the flames. Firefighters have been engaged in continuous, exhausting operations, often battling the blazes overnight. The sheer number of active fires means resources are stretched thin, and many communities are left vulnerable. The environmental impact is catastrophic. Thousands of hectares of forests and wildlife habitats have been destroyed, leading to massive loss of biodiversity. Iconic Australian animals such as koalas, kangaroos, and numerous bird species are at risk. with many displaced or killed by the fires. The destruction of vegetation also exacerbates climate change, as vast amounts of carbon dioxide are released into the atmosphere. Human toll is also deeply tragic. Scores of people have lost their homes, and the number of casualties continues to rise. Hospitals are overwhelmed by respiratory issues caused by the smoke, and mental health concerns are escalating due to the trauma and uncertainty faced by affected communities. Government and humanitarian organizations are mobilizing to provide aid and support. Emergency shelters have been set up and relief funds are being allocated for rebuilding efforts. However, the scale of the disaster means that recovery will be long and arduous. Experts warn that the consequences will be felt for years, not only in the ecological and economic domains, but also in the social fabric of affected communities. The causes of the wildfires are complex, but climate change is recognized as a key driver. Increasingly frequent heat waves, reduced rainfall, and changing weather patterns have created conditions ripe for extreme fire seasons. Scientists warn that unless urgent measures are taken globally to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, such disasters will become more common and more severe. In the meantime, Australians are showing remarkable resilience and solidarity. Communities are coming together to support those who have lost everything. Volunteers and neighbors are helping with evacuations, distributing supplies, and providing emotional support. Social media platforms have become vital channels for sharing information and coordinating aid. Despite the bleak situation, there are glimmers of hope. Rainfall forecasts suggest that relief may be on the horizon, which could help firefighters gain control over the blazes. Yet, the scale of the damage means that recovery will require sustained efforts and long-term planning. The current wildfires in Australia stand as a stark reminder of the growing threat posed by climate change and the urgent need for action. The resilience of the Australian people, combined with global cooperation, will be crucial in overcoming this crisis and building a more sustainable future. Impact on major cities. Unlike traditional wildfires that primarily affect rural or forested regions, this season's fires have encroached dangerously close to, and in some cases within, densely populated urban centres. Cities such as Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and Adelaide have reported multiple fire fronts threatening residential neighbourhoods, commercial districts and critical infrastructure. Residents have been forced to evacuate on short notice, often leaving behind their belongings and homes. Emergency services are stretched to the limit, battling flames that jump roads and fire breaks, making containment efforts incredibly challenging. The thick smoke has blanketed these cities, severely affecting air quality and posing serious health risks to millions of people. Hospitals have seen a surge in respiratory complaints and other smoke-related illnesses. Australia is currently facing one of the most severe wildfire crises in its history. Vast regions across the continent have been engulfed in uncontrollable flames, with fires raging fiercely not only in rural and forested areas, but also dangerously close to and within large urban centers. The scale and intensity of these bushfires are unprecedented, sparking a state of emergency and causing widespread devastation. These fires have been fueled by a perfect storm of environmental conditions. Prolonged drought, record-breaking temperatures, and strong, gusty winds have combined to create an environment ripe for rapid fire spread. The dry vegetation across Australia acts as tinder, enabling flames to consume vast areas with alarming speed. What makes the current situation particularly alarming is how these fires have moved beyond the traditional bushfire zones, threatening and impacting major metropolitan areas. Cities such as Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Perth are grappling with smoky skies and hazardous air quality as the fires approach their outskirts. The urban sprawl and surrounding bushlands have made it difficult for fire services to contain the blazes. Thousands of residents have been forced to evacuate their homes under urgent warnings, and emergency shelters have been established to accommodate displaced families. The fear and uncertainty weigh heavily on communities, many of whom have already experienced losses of property, livelihoods, and in some tragic cases, lives. The economic impact of the fires on these cities is already significant. Businesses are shutting down temporarily due to unsafe conditions, transport networks are disrupted, and tourism has taken a major hit. The cost of firefighting efforts, recovery, and rebuilding are expected to run into billions. Power outages and road closures are common, further complicating efforts to restore normalcy. Health officials warn that the thick smoke blanketing the cities is causing respiratory problems, particularly for vulnerable populations like the elderly, children, and those with pre-existing conditions. Hospitals are seeing a surge in admissions related to smoke inhalation and other fire-related injuries. The psychological toll on the population is equally severe, with anxiety and trauma spreading alongside the physical destruction. Authorities are working tirelessly to combat the fires with the help of firefighters from across Australia and even international support teams. Aerial firefighting, backburning techniques, and ground crews are all deployed to try to slow the spread. Yet the vastness of the fires and the challenging terrain mean containment remains elusive in many areas. Climate scientists have repeatedly warned that such extreme fire seasons will become more frequent and severe due to climate change. The current fires serve as a stark reminder of the urgent need for comprehensive strategies to address climate resilience, forest management, and urban planning to protect populations from future disasters. Despite the grim situation, there are countless stories of courage, community spirit, and resilience emerging from the chaos. Volunteers are working alongside emergency services to assist evacuees, neighbors are helping each other rebuild, and the nation is coming together to support those affected by this catastrophe. In summary, Australia's raging wildfires have transcended the rural bush to menace major cities, causing devastating social, economic, and environmental consequences. Recovery will be long and difficult, requiring coordinated efforts from government, communities, and the international community. The fires highlight the urgent need to rethink how societies prepare for and respond to increasingly frequent natural disasters in a warming world. The scope of the disaster, unlike traditional bushfires which primarily affect remote rural areas, the current fires have dangerously approached and even engulfed major cities. Metropolitan areas that were once considered safe havens are now battling smoke-choked skies, air quality warnings, and the looming threat of fire encroachment. This unprecedented proximity to urban populations has forced thousands of residents to evacuate their homes, seeking refuge in emergency shelters or with relatives. Cities such as Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane have reported thick blankets of smoke, making outdoor activity hazardous and disrupting daily life. Airports have experienced delays or closures due to low visibility, and schools and businesses have temporarily shut down. Public health systems are grappling with an influx of patients suffering from respiratory issues linked to poor air quality. Urban planning will also need to adapt, ensuring that cities are better protected from encroaching wildfires. Public education campaigns are vital to increase awareness and preparedness among residents. Australia is currently facing one of the most severe wildfire crises in its modern history. The devastating fires are raging uncontrollably, engulfing vast areas of the country's landscape, including some of its largest and most densely populated cities. What began as a series of isolated blazes has rapidly escalated into an unprecedented national emergency, severely impacting lives, ecosystems, and the economy. The scale of the fires. The fires have spread across multiple states and territories, fueled by a deadly combination of extreme weather conditions, including record-breaking temperatures, prolonged drought, and fierce winds. These factors have created a perfect storm, making the fires extremely difficult to contain. The intensity and speed of the blazes have overwhelmed firefighting resources and forced thousands of residents to evacuate their homes. The affected regions now include not only rural and forested areas, but also urban centers that were once considered safe from such natural disasters. Smoke plumes from the fires have blanketed city skylines, reducing air quality to hazardous levels and forcing the closure of schools, businesses, and transportation networks. Impact on major cities. Several major Australian cities, including Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Adelaide, have experienced the direct and indirect effects of these wildfires. Though the fires have not engulfed the downtown cores, suburban and peri-urban areas on the outskirts have suffered severe damage. In some cases, entire neighborhoods have been evacuated due to the encroaching flames. Sydney, Australia's largest city, has seen its air quality drop to some of the worst levels globally, with thick smoke and ash falling like snow. Hospitals are reporting an increase in respiratory illnesses, and vulnerable populations such as the elderly and children are especially at risk. The government has issued numerous health warnings, urging people to stay indoors and avoid strenuous outdoor activities. Melbourne and Brisbane have also been heavily impacted, with many suburbs facing evacuation orders and emergency shelters operating at full capacity. The local economies are suffering as businesses close and tourism plummets. The disruption has reached critical infrastructure such as power lines, roads, and communication networks, complicating emergency responses and recovery efforts. Human and environmental toll. The human cost of these fires is heartbreaking. Numerous fatalities have been reported, and many more people have sustained injuries. Thousands have lost their homes and possessions, leaving them displaced and reliant on humanitarian aid. Blazing cities and emergency alerts. Australia is currently facing a ferocious wildfire season, the most threatening in years. Southern and eastern regions, including parts of Victoria, New South Wales, and South Australia, are experiencing extreme fire conditions, dramatically fueled by an escalating heat wave, record low rainfall, persistent drought, and the long-term impacts of climate change. Australia is once again facing a catastrophic environmental disaster as unprecedented wildfires tear through vast regions of the country. As of June 2025, some of the nation's largest cities and surrounding areas are under siege by uncontrollable fires fueled by extreme heat, high winds, and ongoing drought conditions. This year's fire season has already been marked as one of the worst in recent history, with devastation stretching across New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, and South Australia. Major cities under threat. The fires have reached the outskirts of several major urban centres, with Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Adelaide experiencing dangerous levels of smoke pollution and rapidly advancing flames. Evacuation orders have been issued in the suburbs of these cities as emergency services battle day and night to protect homes, critical infrastructure and lives. In Sydney, the iconic Blue Mountains region is ablaze once again, with flames edging dangerously close to western suburbs like Penrith and Blacktown. Residents are fleeing their homes, many with only moments to spare. Thousands are sheltering in evacuation centres, sports halls and community buildings, waiting anxiously for updates. In Melbourne, bushfires have engulfed surrounding rural zones, spreading towards the city through the Dandenong Ranges and Yarra Valley. The city skyline is shrouded in thick smoke, turning day into night. Hospitals report an overwhelming number of patients with respiratory issues, while firefighters are stretched thin trying to contain multiple infernos. National emergency declared. Australian Prime Minister has declared a national emergency, calling upon international assistance to help control the fires. Reinforcements from the United States, Canada, and New Zealand have arrived to support exhausted Australian crews. Military aircraft are dropping fire retardants in critical zones, and hundreds of volunteers are working side by side with professionals. Human and environmental toll. Over 3 million hectares of land have been scorched. An estimated 15,000 plus homes are either damaged or completely destroyed. More tragically, dozens of people have lost their lives and hundreds remain missing. Wildlife has also been devastated. Ecologists estimate that hundreds of millions of animals, including koalas, kangaroos, birds, reptiles, and insects, have perished. Entire ecosystems are collapsing under the extreme heat and destruction, threatening endangered species with extinction. Climate crisis connection. Experts point to the worsening climate crisis as a major contributing factor. Prolonged drought, record-breaking temperatures, some regions saw highs of 47 or 116 degrees, and strong winds have created perfect conditions for firestorms. Scientists warn that without urgent climate action, such disasters will become even more frequent and intense. Stories of heroism and hope. Amid the horror, stories of bravery and unity are emerging. Firefighters, both local and foreign, are risking their lives on the front lines. Civilians are delivering supplies, rescuing animals, and opening their homes to evacuees. Communities across Australia are banding together with a spirit of resilience and solidarity that defines the nation's response to tragedy. Australia is once again facing one of its most devastating natural disasters as raging wildfires tear through vast regions of the country, threatening both communities and major metropolitan areas. As of now, multiple cities across New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, and even parts of Queensland are under red alert, with emergency services stretched beyond capacity. Catastrophic fire conditions across the nation. The Australian summer of 2025 has brought record-breaking temperatures, prolonged drought, and fierce winds, a deadly combination that has ignited and rapidly fueled fires across the continent. In many areas, temperatures are soaring above 45 degrees, 138 degrees, and humidity levels have plummeted to critically low levels, creating a perfect storm for uncontrollable blazes. Urban centers now in danger. What's especially alarming this season is that the fires are no longer confined to the bush or remote regions. They are now encroaching upon major urban centers. Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, and even the outskirts of Brisbane are reporting fire outbreaks, smoke pollution, and large-scale evacuations. In Sydney, suburbs like Penrith, Blacktown, and parts of the Blue Mountains are experiencing active fires. Raging wildfires engulf Australia, major cities under threat. Australia is once again grappling with a devastating wildfire crisis that is escalating with alarming speed. What began as isolated bushfires in remote rural areas has now spiraled into a national emergency, threatening some of the country's largest cities. As of this week, towering infernos have breached urban perimeters, forcing mass evacuations, consuming homes and infrastructure, and casting entire regions under a thick, toxic haze of smoke. A nation in flames. The current wildfire season in Australia is among the most catastrophic in recent memory. Fueled by soaring temperatures, prolonged drought, and fierce winds, bushfires have ignited across multiple states, particularly New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, and South Australia. These fires are spreading rapidly, jumping containment lines, crossing highways, and reaching the outer suburbs of cities like Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide. In Sydney, a ring of fire has surrounded portions of the city's west and southwest. Suburbs such as Penrith, Campbelltown, and Blacktown have witnessed sky-high flames and choking smoke that have plunged daytime into eerie darkness. Residents have been urged to evacuate or prepare for rapidly shifting fire fronts. Emergency alerts are being issued hourly as firefighters battle to keep the blazes from moving deeper into urban centers. Melbourne is facing a similar scenario, with fires approaching from the north and east. The iconic Dandenong Ranges and nearby townships have been severely affected, and thousands have fled toward the city for shelter. Smoke has blanketed the skyline, reducing visibility and triggering widespread health warnings, unprecedented scale and intensity. Authorities are calling the scale of the fires unprecedented. More than 12 million hectares